Welcome, everyone. This is our last session of this is just the beginning. And it's kind of the conclusion of the Lenten series, Radical Rearrangement, which has been a rich opportunity for me, and I hope a rich opportunity for other people as well. I'm one of these people who kind of has to learn by doing, by being, by reading, by creating deadlines and creating questions and then just diving into them. And that's kind of what this has provided the opportunity to do. So I'm very grateful for that. So I'm glad to welcome you this final time for our kind of tradition of centering with some words and some breath and some poetry before we dive into our focus this evening, which includes the fabulous questions that that Tony gave us last week. And I'm just scrolling through my notes here. Questions around what does it mean to have a practice of earth? What does it mean to have a practice of light, a practice of water, a practice of air? So he was inviting us to think about the four elements that we've been sinking into over the last weeks, and then think about what might be a practice of those elements. And so I've been thinking about that today. So I have a head start on you if it wasn't top of mind for you for the last week, but we'll provide an opportunity to think about that. And then also to take that one step further and to think about what does your relationship to these elements reveal about your connection to the earth? So that's going to be the second layer of that reflection. And then the second part of our time together is to move from what is to what if. And I'm very excited to share some fresh ideas that I've had about that, bringing together some different kind of sources and mashing them up, and something new has come forth, and I'm excited to share that with you later on this evening. So that's kind of what is in store for us, liberally sprinkled with, I think, 3 poems. So, we're covering all the bases here. Welcome. So glad you have gathered your curiosity, your courage, your desire for connection, your brokenheartedness for and with the world and the earth. You have gathered all these pieces and decided to be with others in this season of radical rearrangement. So as is our practice, and as we've named last week, perhaps is the Zoom equivalent of the passing of the peace, I invite you to look at the people that are joining us, all of us who are here in this Zoom room, and acknowledge one another with a smile or a wave, because it's our presence here together, fully present behind our eyes and paying attention and resisting multitasking, being present in our words and in our silence, that makes this a lively, meaningful, generative space. So it's something we create together by our shared energy, our authenticity, and our vulnerability. So this opportunity, this table, is supported by the United Church of Canada, nationally and locally by the Chinook Winds region of the United Church. Ralph Connor Memorial United Church is a core partner. Greg Woolley has been our kind of tech support and wonderful participant over the last 5 weeks. Greg and Tony Snow and Beth Lorimer are members of the advisory committee. And we acknowledge, as we come together in the language that has been adopted in the communities that we're part of, the land acknowledgement that is familiar to us, that I come to this event as someone who is resident on the land where Treaty 7 was made with the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, and Métis Nation Region 3. So as we begin and as we do a quieting and an arriving and a centering practice, I wanted to reference the fact that at the very beginning of the genesis of the idea of Green Exodus, there was the concept of empty cup and full cup. So somehow at the very kind of beginnings, there was that idea. And what I understood about those two phrases was that empty cup was about the necessity of the contemplative tradition, the practices of meditation, the via negativa, to use Matthew Fox's language, that it was very important to go on this journey with practices of emptying, of letting go, of not knowing, of waiting, and that was a really important part of whatever the journey was going to be. And so it feels really good that that's become an integral part of how we gather. We gather with silence, and we gather with invitations to let go. And at the other kind of end of the spectrum was the concept of full cup, the concept of rich ideas, lively conversation, personalities, possibilities, all of that liveliness that happens when human beings are healthy and well and in community with one another, all the wisdom we have from our cultures, from our faith traditions, all of that full cup. So we have both of these as part of our journey, and we move at different points from one to the other. We find that in our own experience. One moment we're in the via positiva. Life is good. Everything's beautiful. My dog is the most gorgeous animal in the planet. Thinking of you, Trevor. And then we go into a space of complete not knowing, complete questioning, complete, God, where are you? Complete, and we can move back and forth between these, but they're both parts of our experience. So I wanted to begin by reading this poem, Statements from Meister Eckhart, that we first met during the Via Negativa session. And then after I've read it, we'll go to a time of quiet. And I just invite you to take a couple of minutes to be quiet and to just experiment with just being present to what is more than us. And if you find you start to think, just come back to your breath and just pay attention to it. And we'll just take a few moments for this experience of being an empty cup. There, where clinging to things ends, is where God begins to be. If a cask is to contain wine, you must first pour out the water. The cask must be bare and empty. Therefore, if you wish to receive divine joy and God, first pour out your clinging to things. Everything that is to receive must and ought to be empty. There where clinging to things ends is where God begins to be. If a cask is to contain wine, you must first pour out the water. The cask must be bare and empty. Therefore, if you wish to receive divine joy and God, first pour out your clinging to things. Everything that is to receive must and ought to be empty. And I bring us back into our time of connecting and being present with one another with our poem by Denise Levertov. The avowal. As swimmers dare to lie, face to the sky, and water bears them. As hawks rest upon air, and air sustains them. So would I learn to attain free fall and float into Creator Spirit's deep embrace, knowing that no effort earns that all surrounding grace. Thank you. So at this point, we'll move into our kind of integrating conversation about the elements as Tony has been guiding us. And Tony, what are your thoughts about how we should proceed with this at this point? Would you like me to set people up to read the poem together?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that works.
Okay, so we have a wonderful poem which some of you may have already met. I think Trevor's met it in the Ecological Civilization series. It's called, oh, and I have to share my screen so that you can see it. How does that work? Can you see that? Yeah? Okay, there we go. So this is the Delight Song of Teseo Tali by N. Scott Momaday. And what I would suggest is that we'll each read 3 lines and we'll kind of move through the poem. So it ends with this stanza here, and I've just divided it up into chunks of 3 lines each, so that each person could read 3 lines, and then we'll go back to the beginning if there's still some sections to read. So Suzanne, I'm wondering if you could read first, and then Trevor, and then Pam, and then Tony, and then myself, and then we'll kind of go back to the beginning again. Does that work for you? So Suzanne, and then Trevor, and then Pam, and then Tony, and then me.
Okay. I am a feather on the bright sky. I am the blue horse that runs in the plain. I am the fish that rolls, shining in the water.
I'm the shadow that follows the child. I'm the evening light, the luster of meadows. I am an eagle playing with the wind.
I am a cluster of bright beads. I am the farthest star. I am the cold of dawn.
I am the roaring of the rain. I am the glitter on the crust of the snow. I am the long track of the moon in a lake.
I am a flame of 4 colors. I am a deer standing away in the dusk. I am a field of sumac and pomme blanche. Oh, Margaret, I know you're there. There you go. I only see 4 people on my screen, and then I thought, there's more. Where's Margaret? Okay, there you go, Margaret.
I am an angle of geese in the winter sun. I am the hunger of a young wolf. I am the whole dream of these things.
Should I read that next? You see, I am alive. I am alive. I stand in good relation to the earth. I stand in good relation to the gods.
I stand in good relation to all that is beautiful. I stand in good relation to the daughter of Sentante. You see, I am alive. I am alive.
Thank you. I just, as we kind of move into our work with the elements, I'm just curious, maybe if you could just name which one of these phrases really reaches out to you and grabs you.
I really like I am the farthest star, because that's really hard to imagine, the one that is the farthest. And I like to play with that idea.
I like, I am alive. In these days with everything going on, I am thankful to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
I am a cluster of bright beads.
Lovely.
I am the glitter on the crust of the snow.
Well, I really enjoyed reading I am a deer standing away in the dusk. I liked reading that. Felt like a good place to be. Tony, which one for you?
That one there. I'm the whole dream of these things.
Nice. Nice. Well, this feels like a wonderful kind of positioning ourselves in relationship to so many of the elements and the aspects of this planet that we're part of. This poem helps us to kind of move into that space, which is a great place from which to start our conversation. So I'll stop sharing now And okay, I just have to figure out getting my screens all back where I need them to be. So Tony, would you like me to lead the discussion, or would you like to do that? We didn't kind of confirm that.
I can do that. That's fine.
Okay.
Just want to share a little bit before we do that, and just kind of give us a little bit of an orientation to these ideas. One of the things that, in terms of trying to come to a new place in our thinking and a new way of understanding our relationship to the earth and to our place within it, to personalize and give us a chance to do a land acknowledgement that comes from our experience and who we are. So this idea, which we've been doing, I think now for about a year and a half, with beginning with Green Exodus in Canmore, this exercise is a continual evolution of how we are investing ourselves in the work and how we recognize ourselves in the land around us, in creation, that we are called into being by this world. So I think that those type of things give us that connection. So I'm just going to do, as we always begin, with a smudge, and just to offer that prayer. Jesus Christ. Amen. The reason to do that is because when we talk about the land, we're talking about something sacred. We're talking about a sacred relationship and how we are engaged with that. Here, I've done in my last year of my MDiv, writing different types of works. Here, we had a course on writing an earth psalm, or a psalm we were writing. And here, the one that I did was one that I presented at last year's Earth Day. So I'll just read that here. Akdiyabiyo Shiganawakan, Makoche, Mother Earth, Mother of Life, with blessing you shine, keeper of all creation, keeper of all knowledge, connector of wisdom traditions across the four directions, across time, across distance, across species and matter. You help us to know that we each have a part of this story to tell, and when we share your wisdom, the world flourishes. For we humans, we know your body nourishes us, and without your gifts, there is no existence. The plants, the fruits, the medicines all connect us to sacred healing and renewal. We are given renewed life. Upon your lands, waters, live the other life forms of animal, bird, and fish. With each of these, we share an understanding about the world. From the greatest mountain to the smallest insect, you bring us together to reveal the great mysteries of our world. This interconnection gives us wholeness. The energy of all tells us the mystery of life. In gratitude and honor, we humbly give thanks. Ishnish, which is our word for thank you. Here, as part of that cycle, to reconnect with these elements of fire, earth, water, and air, and how those coordinate around us, a way of being centered in the midst of creation, above the cosmos and below the earth. In this, it is a way of honoring the wisdom of Indigenous people that have carried forward. Here in the First Nation version of the Bible, Romans 2, it says, if the outside nations who never heard the law do what they know is right, this natural law is all they need. They show that creation's law is already at work within them, carved into their hearts. There is a deep voice within their inner being that speaks to them about what is right and what is wrong. And that way of knowing the earth helps us to center around that practice of earth. For us in the Stony Nation, this mountain, Mount Yamnathka, is the center of Go where God sits in our lands, in that practice of water, that idea of sacredness of water. Here, Minnewanka, a lake of the spirits, space where we go for vision quest and for prayer. In a practice of light, here, the light that shines down from the cave and basin is an opening into this subterranean world where we go for healing, and is connection back and forth of that light and this place of healing. And that practice of air, when we think about Yarhe Tatanga Wawehage Waka, which is Buffalo Guardian Spirit Mountain, which is the tidal mountain at Banff, and the outline of the mountain that you see here. This can only really be seen from the air, from the mountaintop, that this is a guardian spirit of this valley, and that this valley is filled with medicines, filled with sacred stories, sacred waters, healing places. So it's that way of understanding how we are in land together. And so for our land acknowledgement, we call this part of the world Yathkamokoche, Stony Country. This is our holy land. Each part of this world has a name. Each part has a story. As in many indigenous traditions, we have a sacred center. Mount Iamnathka is a sacred mountain where God sits in our land. The healing waters of Banff, the Cascade Falls of Minerva, the mystic lakes of the Kananaskis, the ceremonial center at Cypress Hills, all orient us to this sacred space that we share with our Niitsitapi, Tsuut'ina, and Métis relatives. We artfully say that this is our place of belonging, a Sinapotek in Anishinaabe. They're sometimes called the mountain poets, sometimes called people of the shining mountains, stone people, Yarhe Nakudabi. The mountains are our ancestral lands that tell the legends of time before memory can recall. This is the place where we have always been, whose trees speak our story back to us, where the winds carry our story in spirit and song, whose medicines have understood our bodies as children of the land and healed us. We are in continual communion with these lands, the faithful servant and constant steward, whose teachings and instruction have helped to keep the gentle balance. Even as the newcomers came to make a new relationship, we continue to seek that balance. To learn this is to learn disruption, to learn exclusion, to learn about the taking from and exploitation. This is the space of apology, the space of correction, reflecting on what the world could be if we have ears to hear and hearts to listen. May we hear this and live in grace for the world that is yet to come. And so in this exercise of demonstrating what a land acknowledgement could be, we take these elements and we try to personalize, to connect with them and give us a sense of belonging to those spaces that is connected to our history and our understanding and our hopes and dreams about particular areas, what we come to know and what becomes significant to us in our way of practice. And so I just want to take a moment here just to recenter us on those thoughts. And you can take time to jot things down that come to mind, but I just wanted to play, as we've been doing with the segments here, just a song too. So as we think about those spaces and those terms, perhaps we now are at the point of those that have thought through some of those ideas around the elements and how we connect to those elements. For me, it is as though we're writing poetry. It is as though we're writing music. It is as though we're writing an emotion into something that we hold sacred in our connection to land. And it's something only we can understand, really, something only we can bring forward. What we've learned, what we've engaged with, the struggles that we've had, what brought us here. These are, to me, the foundations of why we feel we belong and what it takes to nurture that sense of self into the land. There's an important part of that, of when in our disposable economy and in society, we don't often think about those long-term and intergenerational effects. And yet I think that's where we need to go, especially with the land acknowledgement, because we're recognizing something that is generations old and incomplete. And I think that the more we step into it, the more we become enfleshed in that idea of the land, our presence, and being here, the more we can take ownership of our action and the things that we are connected to. So I'm going to leave it at that. And Sarah, you might have some other idea around how we could get this out onto paper. So.
Wonderful. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tony. And I must say, the drone flute, and I know when I've heard the didgeridoo, it's almost like if the earth had a voice, that's what it would sound like, right? Those instruments seem to just somehow, I don't know, if the earth had a voice, that's one of the voices it would have. The earth would have it, I think. So it's always lovely to hear those sounds. So I'll just share kind of where my thinking was going with this. And I've kind of approached the whole concept of land acknowledgement different ways. Sometimes I've approached it in terms of my own geography, kind of my own story of where I've lived on the planet and how I've moved. And but this time around, I was thinking more about practices of earth. And I was thinking, so I'll just give you an example of what came to mind for me, because I'm not sure where you're going with this. So I'll just give you an example and then we can have a conversation and you can share where you're going, or if you've gone anywhere, or if you're like, what? I'm not getting this. So I was thinking about what does it mean to have a practice of earth? And I was remembering a conservationist who hung out with us when we were doing the Canmore series. And one of the things he suggested was really important was that people should have some way of being kind of active in the biosphere, like whether it was gardening or fishing or hunting or gathering or, caring for animals or bird watching, but some dynamic way of being kind of engaged. So it's not just a passive experience, but something that's requiring more of your kind of engage your senses or your capacities. So I was wondering about that, and I was thinking about things like gardening, contemplative walking. So that was a couple of things that came up for me about practices of the earth. So I'm just curious, what things kind of come to your mind if you think about, if you were to develop practices of the earth, what would be in your repertoire at the moment, or what might you like to pursue or cultivate? This might be one of those questions that gets asked and kind of like earworms, kind of finds its way into your mind and your heart and your subconscious, and you'll wake up tomorrow morning, you'll stand in the shower and you'll go, aha, I know what my earth practice is or could be. But if anyone has any kind of top of mind thoughts that come initially, it'd be lovely to hear them. So a move perhaps into the question about light. And so there again, we have the opportunity to think about practices of light. And in some ways, that's a bit easier. I mean, we live in a northern country. We use candles. We put lights out to celebrate Christmas. So that was one of the things that I was just being aware of, was that whole tradition of candles. I know at Prairie Sky, tomorrow we're having to celebrate Earth Day. We're having a fire outside. So gathering around fire pits, camping in the city as a way of rooting ourselves, helping ourselves to feel more kind of outdoor people. Fires are often part of that. Any other thoughts about practices of light or fire that are part of your life or might be? I'll share a funny story that happened to me on, was the day between, it was Saturday. And for some reason I decided the moon was gorgeous. The moon was big and round. And I decided to watch it set because it was setting in the morning going down, so I actually got distracted. So I didn't watch a whole arc, but I did see the last moments of watching the moon set. And as I'm watching it, I'm thinking, like, I know the moon's not moving, right? Like, I know it's the earth that's moving, right? But we have this language we talk about, and so then I go downstairs and I decide I'm going to listen to a CBC podcast, Tapestry. So I say to my phone to find me Tapestry to listen to. And what it does is it pops up this song by Carole King, which is, I felt the earth move under my feet, was the language of the song. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is just what I've been thinking about. And then I get this song. And then it goes on to talk about having a baby. And I was just thinking of all of our lovely via positiva, the joy of the earth, and then the via creativa, which is about, generativity and baby. And anyway, I felt very blessed by that experience. But it was an experience, a kind of synergy moment or a synchronicity moment that was lovely for me. So what about practices of water? And so I had an interesting reflection today. I go to the pool a lot. I go to deep water workout. And one thing I noticed at one point in the pool where I was, that a fellow came and he just floated for about 5 minutes. He just lay on his back and he just floated. And I was remembering the poem that we've been living with. And I just thought, how lovely. And I know when I take the time to do that, what a wonderful experience it is. But I also had a sense of how I use the water, right? Like, I don't have Thomas Berry talks about needing to be in relationship with the parts of the earth as a communion of subjects, rather than something of objects, which I can't remember the other part of the phrase right now. But I was just aware I'm using the water, right? And I had the sense of, what would it be like if I had a sense of gratitude every time I got into the pool and every time I stepped out of the pool? Like, how would that change things for me, because I am so blessed by the water. But mainly I just use it as my way to get fit, my way to, be well. But I don't have this sense of mutuality or appreciation, so that was something that percolated for me today. Any other thoughts about practice of water? So the last element would be any practices of air. Practices of air. And I guess the top of mind one for me would be just all of the learning and the practicing that I've been doing and that we've included as part of Green Exodus around meditation and contemplation, and how that process is often supported by paying attention to our breath, and that becomes a way that we're able to both become more quiet and more empty, but also, as we've been exploring, that breath connects us with everything, that breath connects us with all that was and all that's to come and all that's around us, and just that wonderful sense of that we're not alone, we're connected by our breathing, and we're part of the kind of flow and movement and liveliness of the biosphere through our breath. So that was the one that seemed kind of there for me as a practice. Lovely. I know I spent some time in England going to school, and when I came back to Canada, one of the things I totally loved was the open sky and the clouds. And there was just a sense of, oh yes, there's so many gorgeous big sky space and beautiful clouds moving around in the sky, and just reveling in that. And I still do love. Yeah, I'm thinking you reminded me, Trevor, with your comment about Northern Lights, that we also get like cloud shows as well as Northern Light shows.
The tradition of air and of wind, each has a direction, each has a calling. They're related as the four brothers, four siblings who are put to the corners of the earth, and from there they are in continuous movement with creation. So they help to bring life, they help to bring rejuvenation, they bring storm and change of weather and season. So this idea of air, especially with the connection of spirit, is why it is connected to that northern realm. It's connected to the buffalo spirit. It's connected to those inclement weather of winter, that final sort of space. And so it is kind of that beginning and ending of life, where it is the last breath and the first breath kind of idea.
Nice. That's great. Thank you. So I really enjoy how our dialogue here really has moved us into more of a relationship. And I've got the full quote here from Thomas Berry of being a communion of subjects rather than a collection of objects. I think even just in this conversation that we're each having about the elements this evening, I feel myself getting a deeper or a more kind of tangible, more concrete sense of the elements, and a sense of curiosity and appreciation and recognition, and less that they're just wallpaper, like just whatever, but the sense of being part of something. So it feels really rich. So I wanted to move us a little bit into the last part of actually, this is just the beginning series, which is to consider what if. So we started this journey saying that this season of radical rearrangement, when things feel apocalyptic, when things feel like the worlds are being changed and shifted and we don't know which way is up, that it's by being present to what is and the vulnerability and the openness and the letting go of that, the via negativa of being present to what is, that something new comes forth, the what if, the possibility. And I wanted to share, first off, I wanted to share the passage from Luke, I think it's Luke 4, 14 through 15. And then I want to introduce you very briefly to the work of one of my heroes, Community, the Structure of Belonging by Peter Block, my hero, one of my heroes. So in this passage in Luke, it's the passage after the temptation. Jesus comes back to Galilee. He's full of the Holy Spirit, and he goes to Nazareth where he's been raised. And when he goes to the meeting place, he is handed a scroll of the prophet Isaiah, and he opens it and he reads. This is what he reads. God's Spirit is on me. He's chosen me to preach the message of good news to the poor, sent me to announce pardon to prisoners and recovery of sight to the blind, to set the burdened and battered free, to announce this is God's time to shine. He rolled up the scroll, handed it back to the assistant, and sat down. Every eye in the place was on him, intent. Then he started in. You've just heard scripture make history. It came true just now in this place. Just reading that gives me goosebumps. So he is declaring this statement which had been attributed to a future time to be happening now, in this moment, in this time. So what this overlaps with for me in a kind of dynamic way is the work of Peter Block. Peter Block's work is around community development. His work is based on questions. He invites groups of people into a series of questions to enable them to move forward into new futures. And he has 6 conversations that he outlines, and each conversation is a cluster of questions. I wanted to highlight this evening is his conversation about possibility. So this is some of what he says about this. Living systems are propelled by the force of the future. The possibility conversation frees us to be pulled by a new future. And one of the things that he really makes a big distinction between is what he calls the possibility conversation and the problem-solving conversation. So the problem-solving conversation is one looking back. It's one saying what was wrong, what we did wrong, what happened, what was bad. And the possibility conversation is one that is focused in the future. And I heard an example of this today when I was driving home from the pool. Everything happens around the pool. I don't get out much. Anyway, I'm coming back from the pool, and there was a report about all of the things that have been unfolding since the indigenous delegations went to Rome and met with the Pope. And the person who was speaking on this occasion was a representative of some indigenous groups in Manitoba. And the comment that the individual made, the man made, was that we can't do anything about the past, but we can sure control the future. We can sure have an impact on the future. And I thought, he's also making a possibility statement. So what is the possibility conversation? So the possibility conversation is an act of declaration. So that's what we heard Jesus make, right? He said, this is happening now. I am here. I am where this is happening. Let's get this show on the road. And then, of course, they wanted to kill him and he had to leave. But, you know, that's what he said. He said, this is happening now. So Peter Block says, possibility occurs as a declaration, and declaring a possibility wholeheartedly can, in fact, be the transformation. So it's by actually saying, this is what I stand for. This is what I am committed to. This is what I say yes to. This is what I am going to do. This is what I am loving. And this, you know, it's by that kind of a presence and a statement that a new future is born. And when people do that in community, when together they name a reality that they are wanting, that they and committing to, that becomes very powerful. So the distinctions, so he says, the challenge with possibility is it gets confused with goals, prediction, and optimism. Possibility is not about what we plan to happen or what we think will happen or whether things will get better. Goals, predictions, and optimisms don't create anything. They just might make things a little better and cheer us up at the process. Nor is possibility simply a dream. Dreaming leaves us bystanders or observers of our lives. Possibility creates something new. It is a declaration of a future that has the quality of being and aliveness that we choose to live into. It is framed as a declaration of the world that I want to inhabit. It is a statement of who I am that just transcends our history, our story, and our usual demographics. The power is in the act of declaring. So I'm going to pause there because these are pretty powerful statements. And I'm just curious about what you're hearing and how they land with you, how they resonate or don't. But when we're in communities that are also composed of individuals intent on finding the possibilities, declaring the possibilities, there can be some trust and relationship to enable that voice, that articulation to happen. One of the things he says, which I think is really quite true, in groups, the communal possibility comes into being through individual public declarations of possibility, much the same as witnessing in religious gatherings. So I thought that was pretty kind of cool, kind of an interesting parallel for those of us that have various religious traditions. So in some ways, you're just getting a tiny snapshot because this is just like a tiny piece of a whole journey that he has, which has many different parts to it. And we're diving into one piece of it. But I just wanted to connect it with Jesus, the story we have of Jesus in Luke, and the theme of our last session, which is about that whole exploration of what if. And so I wanted to connect that exploration of what if with the possibility of making declarations of possibility. So the question that he would have, the questions he would invite people into as a way to kind of explore whether there's a possibility statement that you're wanting to make is the question that he usually uses is, what is the crossroads where you find yourself at this stage of your life or work around this project that we're gathered around? So what is the crossroads perhaps that you are at in terms of your engagement around the earth and your sense of commitment or action? What is the crossroads that you're at? So that's the question that he would offer people the opportunity to talk about in small groups as a way to kind of sort through that kind of, and it's an existential thing, right? It's like today, now, right now, what is the crossroads that I'm at around this? I can do this or I can do that. What is the crossroads? And it can be tiny or it can be big, but it's very specific to you. And we don't have enough time to do that tonight. We have to get together again sometime to do some of this, but that's what I just wanted to give you a taste of around that part of what if. So, well, it feels rich as always. So much goodness has been shared. Just as we bring our time to a close, I just invite you to just name any kind of top of mind things that you're leaving with, kind of what's bubbling or what you've appreciated. Yeah, just as we kind of conclude this evening and also this series together. And I may send you a quote unquote evaluation form. That sounds really yicky. Let's say feedback form. But I may do that. I often say that and I don't get around to it. So I may try. If you have feedback you would like to give and I haven't sent you a form, please feel free to just send me the feedback anyway. That would be great.